My name is Guy Swan. I am the Vice President for Education at the Association of the U.S. Army, AUSA, and I want to thank you all for coming on behalf of my colleagues here who you'll all meet in a few minutes. Why are we here today? This is probably the question that we're asking ourselves. I ask myself that. Why are we doing this? And, you know, I think there were a lot of reasons for doing this. I want to thank my friend Valerie Walker back here because she chastised me enough into starting this effort, and Patty Barron for executing it from our side. But the other associations that are here have all chipped in and brought this together. But what the real purpose is there's so much change going on inside the Beltway, so much change going on in our armed forces, in our nation. And I think for those of you that are outside of the Beltway or have real lives, you know, those of us that live inside the Beltway, we're not even real people. You know, we're those people up in Washington. But you have things to do. You have your spouses are serving us. Some of you are serving. You're busy. You're busy doing the nation's work every day, and you ought to be proud of that. We thank you for that. But you're not thinking about this stuff you're seeing in the papers about sequestration and pay raises and family programs and TRICARE and COLAs. You get bits and pieces of that every day, and I would suspect from what I hear from people that one, it's confusing, two, it's very unnerving and uncertain. And I think what our goal here today is to try to take some of the Beltway mumbo jumbo and put it in terms that real people can understand. What is the real effect on a family? What is the real effect on a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine out there that's just trying to do the job, in some cases just survive, and they're counting on people other than themselves to take care of these issues. And so our purpose here today is to kind of frame this, take your questions. We live this every day. That is our job, is to live these issues every day, understand what's going on, and then try to convey to the members of our associations, to the general public, to members of Congress, how this is affecting each and every one of our constituents. So that's really why we're here today. I'm going to make just one remark here, and then others will fill in the blanks. But this notion of sequestration, I mean, you hear this term every day. You've heard the generals and admirals talking about this all the time. And I just want to give you a 30-second legislative lesson on why this is important. When the Congress passed the Budget Control Act back in 2011, it accounted for a reduction in the federal budget, and that translated into reductions in the Department of Defense that were well understood, agreed to by all the members of Congress, agreed to by the administration. However, the cuts in that bill did not go far enough into reducing our national debt, okay? There was still a delta there of about $1.2 trillion that was still needed to be found within our spending in the federal budget, domestically and in defense. So there was, the law said we've got to find a way to reduce another $1.2 trillion. So they put together this group that you remember that was called the Super Committee. Remember the Super Committee? And there was great fanfare about the Super Committee. What are they doing behind closed doors? What are they doing? And they basically did nothing. They failed. They failed to find ways to take some from education, some from defense, some from, you know, Social Security or whatever, to get this $1.2 trillion delta down. Because there was a potential for that to fail, the law included a doomsday clause that we know as sequestration. If you guys fail to figure out how to make these cuts, then we're just going to do it automatically. And we're going to do it in a way that 50% of the cuts will come from domestic spending, roads, highways, schools, and 50% will come from the defense budget. That way you could get the Tea Party guys who don't like food stamps to vote for it, and you could get the left wing to vote for it because it cuts defense. Okay, so you got all these people to vote for this. But the dirty little secret, folks, I want you to understand it, and it'll be the thread throughout the rest of the day. Out of the entire federal budget every year, the defense portion of that budget that funds all of us here, veterans, retirement, all of that, is only 17% of that federal budget each year. 50% from domestic, 50% from defense, 50% of 17%. That's why this has hurt us so much. Okay, that's why these cuts have hurt the Defense Department so deeply. All services, I represent the Army, and the Army has taken understandably larger cuts, but I don't see my Navy friends all that happy about what's going on, or the Air Force or the other guys. But 50% of 17%. Keep that in your mind, 50% of 17%. So when we get into pay cuts, when we get into TRICARE fees, and we get into commissaries and all of those things, those are symptoms of a deeper disease, which is sequestration. And our association and others have taken this on as that's our target. And a number of the association leaders will be up on the Hill in the coming days testifying about this issue. 50% of 17% is wrong. And, okay, that's what we're left with. And we're looking over our shoulder, and there's Mr. Putin doing his thing, and, the North Korean guy, what's he gonna do? They're dropping chlorine bombs on people in Syria. And we're left with 50% of 17% to defend the nation, to do everything else. And that really is the crux of why we're here. And each of these experts is going to take on a piece of this and tell you how it's affecting each of these discrete areas. So yes, ask questions about pay raises, ask questions about the commissary. Please do that. But remember, we wouldn't be in this boat if we didn't have this thing called sequestration. And it really affects you and me more than your mom and dad, folks back home. Sequestration, they don't know what it means. It hasn't affected the domestic side of the country. The only time I saw it affect anybody was remember when the air traffic controllers weren't being funded and everybody was, apoplectic over the air traffic controller. That got fixed quickly. But turn on the TV and there's Admiral Greenert and General Amos and General Welsh up there crying about this thing called sequestration. And the general public doesn't feel it. They don't feel it. They don't understand terms like readiness. What does readiness mean to mom and dad back? They don't know what readiness is. But when you tell them we can't do the mission, that's going to get people's attention, and that's where we're going. So, and it's the last point, and I'll get off the stage here because these guys will cover it more in detail. We in the armed forces, or associated with the armed forces, have this very difficult balance about having high-quality people in an all-volunteer force and making sure they're cared for, their families are cared for, and then having a force that can fight when asked to go. That's important. So when we're starting to, wring our hands over whether we get 1% or 1.8%, that's important to maintain that high-quality force that we have depended on. But that 0.8% might mean whether you have 11 carrier battle groups or 10 carrier battle groups, or a certain number of brigade combat teams or fighter jets. And so this is the dilemma that we put our nation's military leaders in. We call it a Hobson's choice, where you're having to choose between taking care of your people and fighting and winning the nation's wars. So this is tough stuff, and the Congress is not helping us. The Congress is not helping us. They put this doomsday thing in there, albeit for the right reasons, but it also gave them cover to say, it's in the law, General, I can't do anything about it. It's in the law, what do you want me to do? It's the law of the land. Fix it, fix it. you know, you can fix it. But we get the shoulder shrug every time we go up to the hill on this stuff, and it's really, really disconcerting. But we want you to understand it and take this back to your family members, to people in your organizations. Let them know what's going on, and let them know that there are organizations like these up there fighting every day to make sure that we can fight and we have quality people to do the fighting, okay? So that's my opening speech. I didn't want to get into too much detail. 50% of 17%, it's wrong, and that's what's causing it. Okay.